Now, South Africa's foreign policy must be refined to deal with the crisis of unemployment, poverty and inequality. That's a word from International Relations and Cooperation Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor. She's hosted a symposium looking at South Africa's national interest and its advancement in a global environment. SABC News reporter Khayelihle Khumalo has more.
Well, that's right. Quite a very vitally important symposium around South Africa's national interest. So it's also just about refining the country's foreign policy. These are very uncertain times, facing volatility in so many aspects. Joining us now is Minister Pandor, of course, to explain it further. Minister, quite a very important occasion, especially because, you talk about unemployment as one of those main issues, risk around the national interest. Going forward, how do you deal with the myriad of issues that you face?
Well, I think the framework document on national interests provides us with a set of guidelines and tools that we should utilize. But what I think is most important, it does elaborate those values and principles which should be the key influences and drivers of the foreign policy work that we do. So our posture on human rights, our respect for human dignity, gender equality, non-racism, democracy, all those values and principles that are elaborated in our constitution are the underlying foundation for the national interest that South Africa espouses as it carries out its foreign policy and practice.
And obviously, Minister, you touched on a very thorny issue. We know that with the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, we've seen the U.S. Congress, they have this bill that they are crafting to punish countries that continue to work with the Russian Federation. We're part of BRICS, so inevitably we do work with the Russians in so many spheres. How concerned are you as Pretoria about these developments?
Well, we are expecting Secretary Blinken to visit South Africa this week, and it's one of the issues that we'd want to raise because we don't quite understand how a country and the House of Representatives that publicly states its commitment to democracy and respect for the sovereignty of nations and their equal standing within the United Nations family, how such a set of public representatives could conceive of a piece of legislation such as this bill. So we would want to understand what is its intent, how does America see it being implemented in practice, should it be passed by Senate, which I hope it won't. What is the intention and how does America view our standing as Africa, because it's an Africa-directed bill. Do they understand that we are sovereign as African nations and that we have the right to determine our own position on all international matters?
And just before I let you go, Minister, obviously fresh from the governing party's policy conference, when it comes to international relations, we saw a strong emphasis on the role of the International Criminal Court in terms of making sure that Israel is held accountable for the atrocities committed in Palestine and the annexation against international law. As DIRCO, because you're right at the coalface, how are you going to maintain that, this actually becomes a case, and also just the issue of around the downgrade of the diplomatic ties with Israel?
Well, we continue to be members of the ICC, and our team plays a very important role in the ICC fora in Vienna and in The Hague. So that has been a role we've continued to execute because there was never a final decision on this matter. And we really support the advice that has come from the governing party's International Relations Commission at the policy conference that we need to relook at the resolution because of changed conditions, changed leadership, changed focus of the ICC, which we felt was often unfair in the cases that it selected to prosecute, and that it neglected countries that, in our view, were practicing abuse of human rights, but were able to somehow escape scrutiny and attention of the court. Now that we see that the court is intent on being more balanced, on regarding all abuses affecting humanity as abuses that require prosecution, and given that Africa has said we note this changed position so we will be less hostile, we think it is an opportunity to reconsider.
And just a very final one, Minister. Obviously, in your foreign policy, very clear that your destination is very inextricably linked with the continent. But from time to time, the tension that you do see in our country with certain forces, as DIRCO, what's the plan in terms of, just going forward and tackling this issue that, it's sporadic incidents that really keep on just coming ever so often?
I think part of what we said here is that we want to strengthen community engagement on these matters and really try and build understanding that we are all one as Africans. But we also agree with some of the sentiments expressed that our administration of our immigration laws need to be improved. We need in our DIRCO work to be engaging in the region and with many of the sender countries to look at whether we could collaborate on measures for redressing the dissatisfaction and concerns that many South Africans are expressing. But we remain as committed to Africa, and we can't have an attitude that is hostile to our own fellow Africans. We just need to improve the situation and find ways of doing so.
All right, Minister, thank you so much indeed for your time. Obviously, Minister Pandor facing quite a very monumental task to make sure that eventually South Africa's foreign policy remains dynamic and really adapting to the very ever-evolving space in so many aspects. And of course, we're joined by the academics who are threshing out how should this particular framework be developed to be able to meet the interest in so many facets. You look at the economic diplomacy, you look at the issues pertaining to migration, security, and just the use of technology, especially in this particular point where there are so many challenges that are cross-cutting and also borderless challenges like, of course, global pandemics among